Welcome to PR Talk, sponsored by the PRSA of Oregon and part of the MPN, the Marketing Podcast Network. This is your host, Amy Rosenberg, founder of Veracity and author of A Modern Guide to Public Relations. Help other people find our podcast by subscribing, rating, giving us a review, or sharing on social media. Hi, everybody. I have Antony Cousins here. He's the Executive Director for AI Strategy at Cision, which recently acquired his tech startup, Factima. Hi, Ant. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi.
So let me just tell everyone what we'll talk about first. I do want to hear about how that acquisition will help Cision, which is the media database and monitoring software. And then we'll talk about the future of AI and the comms industry and how that's going to go down. But first, I want to hear about your background because I see that you started your career in IT management for the UK Ministry of Defense, and then you abruptly became press officer for them and just kept going in comms roles. So I'm curious how that happened and then just what the mixture of both careers has done for you.
Yeah, it does sound super random, doesn't it? I started off in IT. So I started out as a developer and then moved into kind of service management, project management. I did 7 years in basically straight kind of IT or tech roles. And then luckily got onto a leadership development scheme in the MOD. And they said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, you know where in the newspaper it says an MOD spokesperson said so-and-so. I want to be one of those MOD spokespeople. That sounds like a cool job. And they said, you're not ready for press office. But I felt like I was. I managed to wangle myself into an interview, got the job and became a press officer. And that got me into Iraq and Afghanistan, kind of deployed to do on-the-ground media relations and campaigning for the armed forces there. And the rest of my career kind of followed a relatively... It seems random from the outside, but there is a logical progression from the press office roles in Iraq and Afghanistan. I got a kind of a counterterrorism tick box on my CV. So my next role was in counterterrorism. And because I'd done kind of deployment in the Middle East and I had counterterrorism, my next role was in Middle East strategy, because those were the themes really. And because of that, I then had the breadth of knowledge to go out back into communications and do that at a fairly senior level. So I think it doesn't look like it makes much sense on paper, but each role sort of progressed naturally to the next. But you're right, I came back to comms because that turned out to be my passion, was communications.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, it does make sense if you look at the trajectory, because if we want to talk about AI, and apparently it is taking over the comms industry, so I don't know what that's about. But if you want to, I mean, it does make sense. So tell us about the tech startup, and then how that then is going to help Cision and its members.
Yeah, so absolutely. Is it taking over? I think it will, and it's not just comms. So after 14 years in government, I went into an AI startup called ProFinder, which was using AI to try and understand more about people, their skills, their interests, experience, to be able to connect them better. And I spent 4 or 5 years doing that, and then into another startup, and then was looking to get back into the specific problem of misinformation and disinformation. I tackled that slightly when I was in counterterrorism, looking at Al Qaeda's single narrative. Basically, their turning around of any facts into something that suited their narrative for recruitment purposes and radicalization. And I was really passionate about that problem. I spent some time in the Middle East during the Arab Spring or the social media revolutions in Egypt and elsewhere, and saw the real impact that social media had at the population level. Right, a country that wasn't democratic got itself a new government because it wanted one. In part because of its use of social media. So I saw that and saw the power of social media, but then like everyone else over the last kind of 10 years or so, saw that steady decline in the positive impact of social media on our society and wanted to get back to that. So that's when I reached out to the founder at Factima and said, hey, how can I help you? And he said, well, it's funny you ask, I'm looking for a CEO. So it was just really great timing for me to find that particular tech startup.
Okay. And so now what is this transition over to Cision going to do? And what is the AI strategy at Cision? Because that's what you're leading. So I'm just curious what that's all about.
Yeah, so the tech we brought over from Factima, right, was specifically designed originally to detect misinformation and disinformation. And when I arrived, I sort of broadened that out to all the kinds of harmful content that brands don't want to be associated with in a cancel culture. So uh, racism, sexism, toxicity, hate speech, religious attacks, all those things that are becoming increasingly punishing on brands if they don't identify that kind of content about themselves faster. So we built the 19 individual machine learning models that track all of that and bring it together into this kind of concept we call threat score, as well as our narrative monitoring tech. So the ability for us to read across all of social media, all of traditional media, and then bring together the narratives that join all that content together. So that's the technology we're bringing to Cision, and that's going to be out in, those items are coming out this year in the new Cision 1 platform, which we're launching in the UK in a couple of months' time. So my first job was just to get that tech integrated. But you're right to ask, the broader AI strategy for Cision is ambitious, I would say, and getting more ambitious by the day, as what we see is increasing capabilities in AI, but also increasing interest and appetite for that technology from the people. And I think that is the thing that has changed over the last kind of 6 months. Is it has had an incremental increase in capability through the large language models that we now have through ChatGPT, but more people have seen the capability of it and are actually willing to trust it. I think that's the biggest thing that's actually changed, and we're just basically going to capitalize on that increased interest.
Okay. So how you work now with a lot of PR people and comms people, I assume, or at Cision. So what do we think of AI? Are we excited about it? Are we nervous about it? Or do we think it's BS? Like what's the general take?
So I might be biased with my job title, but I'm super excited about it, and I'll tell you why. So I'm not excited about AI because I think, oh great, we're going to lose a lot of jobs and AI is going to take over. I'm excited about AI because I think it allows us to spend more time doing something that only humans can do. It allows us to be more truly human. And what I mean by that is it's going to force us to think, what is it that only humans can do in this process of communicating? And what is it that the AIs are actually better at? So producing basic copy for social media posts, right? Analyzing data. These are things that computers do better than humans already. Like, we shouldn't be competing with the humans on that. We should be exploiting the computers for doing that better than us. And therefore focusing the humans on the things that only humans can do. And what I mean by that is relationships, insight, true creativity, and thinking through, and this is the key aspect, I think, is thinking through what the problem really is. And what I mean by that is the AIs we are playing around with now will respond to a prompt you set them, but that's as far as they'll go. Whereas a human can have that same problem fed to them by a client or their manager and say, well, that sounds great, but that isn't the problem you should be solving. This is the problem you need to be solving, right? That exceeding of the brief, that purposeful sort of challenge to the question, that's something only humans are capable of and will only be capable of for a while. So I think this is a great opportunity for humans to realize and be forced to focus on what is the role of a human in this process and spend more time doing that.
Mm-hmm. So, but where's the writer in all of this? Because you mentioned that maybe AI can write social copy better, but the writer also is a human that can solve problems through copywriting. But should the writer be kind of scared?
No, I think if you remember, the large language models are really in responding to the prompt. If you set a bad question, you're going to get a bad output. And so if you're a really capable content writer using AI, you're going to outperform a bad copywriter using AI. So I think there's still a place for copywriters, but they have to exploit the technology. This isn't a case where I think we can put our heads in the sand and ignore this, because the people who exploit the AI will overtake the people that don't. So I think that's the key thing is this is a new way of working and a new way of gaining a significant improvement in productivity. You still need the human to know what good output looks like, what a good problem is to set the AI. That takes humans, that takes skill and experience.
Mm-hmm. And are PR people using this yet?
Oh, for sure. Yes, this is already out there. Whether or not they're using just ChatGPT out the box, whether they're using kind of more specific tools for content generation. Like, there's been generative AI in the space for a couple of years, but I think because those generative AI tools, I'm thinking things like Jasper, were only targeting a specific use case of social media or articles and that kind of copy. The only people that were exposed to it were marketing people, PR people, comms people. And so there was adoption and usage within that particular market. However, no one else outside of that use case was really aware of that. What ChatGPT did was expose the capabilities of that technology to everybody at the same time. Your boss, your manager, your non-comms manager, the CEO, the C-suite, they all saw the capability of this and therefore put more pressure on every individual kind of line of business inside the organization to, hey, what are we doing about this? How are we exploiting this? How are we doing more? So I think it's, people are absolutely using it. Although you're right that there's, I think, depending on which stats you look at, there's a 15, 20, maybe even 30% group of people who are still reticent, nervous, and think maybe if I don't engage with this, it'll just go away.
And then are there other ways to use it right now beyond just writing?
For sure, there's many. I mean, ChatGPT is a good, broadly capable tool for anything to do with. Yes, it'll do writing, but it'll also do summarization. Give it some content, it'll summarize it for you. It will do extraction. Find me these terms in this piece of content. It'll do analysis. Right, tell me the sentiment of this towards any given topic. It is a broadly capable tool. So yeah, there's plenty of different use cases, not just writing.
Okay. And then a few thoughts. Number one, I hear people saying, or whatever, I'm reading articles and this and that, and they're saying, you can use AI for sending out press releases and creating lists and stuff. And I'm thinking, well, we already have software like Cision that I already do that through. So what? I don't understand. And I see what you're saying with AI, with what you're doing with Cision is actually more monitoring. We're monitoring for threats in the brand and whatnot. But with this ploy about being able to distribute press releases, I mean, we've already had that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's also the thing that I think surprises most people. We have been doing this for quite some time. Yeah, a lot of this isn't actually that new. Like sentiment, I think maybe one of the first use cases of machine learning model in the PR use case has been around for over a decade. So, but has been largely one of the only games in town for this kind of technology, and we've kind of ended up exploiting it and stretching it beyond its original use case. But yeah, there's been plenty of other AI in the space for quite a few years. But I just wanted to come back on the monitoring point. At Cision, we actually have we want to use it in monitoring, but we have ambitions whether or not we've already deployed it or we're planning to deploy it in our new kind of Cision One platform this summer. There will be a lot more use cases embedded across the Cision stack.
So here's the thing, and maybe I am getting confused about literal semantics here because it's like Cision and various softwares have already been doing this and they've been using AI to do whatever, but we just haven't called it AI. Is that it?
To a degree. So there has been a kind of a new leap in this specific field of AI, right? The large language models upon which things like ChatGPT are based. That was a real jump in capability. So the ability for you to talk to the AI, for it to kind of respond back in really nuanced text, that is a leap in capability, which we haven't really been making a lot of use of before because it didn't perform that well. So the machine learning algorithms we're previously using the natural language processing to read text and give us a sentiment analysis and things like that. That's been around for a while, but this particular leap in generating like really good quality text that has taken over. So that is truly new. Not many people were doing that before. Like I said, Jasper is a good example, but even Jasper has moved towards using OpenAI now. So I think that was a generational leap, and it really has shocked everyone how fast that leap happened and how far it has gone.
Okay. But so this whole thing about finding contacts and sending out releases or whatever you want to call it, a pitch, whatever, we already do that through media database software. And so exactly. I don't know that I can sit around and use ChatGPT for that right now.
ChatGPT probably isn't a good example of what you'd use for that, only because whilst you could have a good conversation with it and get it to give you that content back, it has a knowledge cutoff date in October 21, I'm going to say. So it's not good at keeping up to date with that information. That's not really a great use case for ChatGPT.
Okay. And so what advice do you have for PR and comms people kind of right now? Like what can they do right now to get ahead of the curve? And then maybe in the future, like in a couple, 3 years, what should they be doing and looking out for?
So right now, I'd say experiment, and it really, I think this is the thing that ChatGPT did really well. Is their interface is so easy to use. You really can play with it and learn quite quickly how to use it, which is why it engaged so many different people. It wasn't just technical people that found value at this. Everybody found value. And that's why it became the fastest growing application in terms of usage ever, right? 100 million users within a couple of months, which is unbelievable. Better than, more take up than Facebook, more than Twitter, more than Netflix, more than anything. And that's because a broad range of people found it really easy to use. So the very first thing you should do is go and experiment. And there are so many free resources online to help you understand how to use ChatGPT, even from a very specific PR use case. So go and experiment is the number one thing you should do with ChatGPT. And the run really quick piece of advice I'd give you is don't treat it like Google. Have a real conversation with it, and you'll get much better results. That's the first easy tip I'll give you. In terms
Oh,
of the future, that's really interesting because this does potentially change if whether you're in-house or agency. I think this does potentially change to a degree, like how you bring colleagues into the organization. Bearing in mind, and I made this point at a talk just the other day, because it occurred to me that if you're thinking you can reduce the number of junior hires you make because you've increased productivity, and this kind of does the role in some ways of a junior creative or junior press officer, I would think about it the opposite, which is the people you hire now, the people finishing university right now, or the people finishing university in a couple of years' time, will have been using tools like ChatGPT or generative AI for the last couple of years. It will have been their best study partner of all time, right? It was there whenever they needed them, and he didn't steal all the credits or teach them to smoke. So it's like it's been there for them the whole time. Their experience and expertise in taking advantage of AI is actually a real credit to them, right? So I think if you're thinking about reducing your junior hiring, increase it, because those people are going to come armed with a small army of interns, and that intern level kind of capability within 3 to 6 months is going to be mid-level, and in a year maybe even senior level creative. So I think take advantage of that. So think about that in your hiring strategy, but consider that the emotional intelligence, the relationships, and the more human experience that comes from people who've been in the business for 5, 10, 15 years, that combined with the more digital native, AI native generation that are coming in, that combined is going to be a really powerful force. So don't also
okay.
think that we just need to get rid of all the people who aren't as comfortable with this. We absolutely need them more human centered skill set to combine to create that diversity of thought that you can need to succeed.
Yeah. Okay. Now, kind of a little bit off topic now, but earlier we were talking about misinformation and fake news, and I have a note that it will get worse before it gets better. That's from your PR team. Now, what can you talk about that? Because why is that? Do you think that's because of AI or what?
Yeah, unfortunately, for sure. So previously, there were a number of markers or indicators we could use to identify misinformation in copy. Like I'm talking about text-based misinformation or disinformation, because of the quality of the writing, because of the way it was written. Now, with people using ChatGPT, you can use the generic markers to identify AI-generated text, but the previous models we were using to identify misinformation aren't going to be as accurate as identifying that content as misinformation because it's written so much better, right? The problem, well, the weakness of misinformation, disinformation written previously was that humans that wrote that content didn't write it very well. So you could almost spot the telltale signs of poor grammar, and even looking at the websites, poorly constructed websites. Now you can construct really credible sounding information, which is still false, by using things like ChatGPT. And they're getting better every day in preventing generative AI tools from creating that kind of information. But it's a really complex model, and it's really hard to stop people from using it in complex and interesting ways to get around those protections. So yeah, the ability for people to create that kind of content at scale, personalized, and then combining that with the generative kind of images and videos, that is going to make things really tricky for journalists, and for us all to determine what is real when we see it primarily shared on social media.
And so is that something that Cision's new capabilities will kind of be able to sniff out?
Yeah, we're working on it. So where that impacts us, for example, is in platforms like Connectively, so our ability to connect kind of subject matter experts with journalists, the ability to detect AI generated content or even fake accounts created by people who aren't really who they say they are. That is increasing in complexity and difficulty, and it's an arms race really between providers like ourselves, other providers, and the people trying to get around the protections we put in place. But this is a zero sum game. I mean, as soon as you put in place a protection, they work a way around it. You have to put in another protection. This has been going on. This has been going on YouTube, for example, for many years now, with people creating duplicate copies of videos just to get kind of likes and shares, and then increase the confidence in accounts and create more ad revenue from that. This has been going on for some time, and it is going to get worse as the tools that allow you to create the content get simpler and easier and more affordable. Yeah.
So then I'll just end with you did mention the timing of this, and what is this called? I don't remember, but it's a new product possibly that you're launching with Cision. And what is the timing and naming of all of this?
Got it. Yes. So Cision 1 is what it's called.
Cision 1, yes.
Cision 1, yes. And that will be coming out in the UK. That's being launched in July. But very quickly, we want to roll that out across the rest of the world. That product has been built with AI in mind. So all of our new AI features, we're almost kind of waiting to release that product because they're being baked into Cision 1.
And then is this something that will be available to Cision members, or is this, and you might not know the answer, and that's fine, but is this something that we would have to do kind of an extra service purchase?
Oh no, this is a brand new platform, but an all-encompassing kind of monitoring platform. So we're replacing a lot of our older platforms with this new one. So this is available to everybody. Roll up.
Okay, so you're just upgrading Okay.
Exactly. The challenge with some of the legacy platforms or in this whole market is a number of the platforms have been around for many, many years because the industry is very, very old. So this is one of those leapfrog moments where we decided not to stick with the legacy platforms and just iteratively improve them, but start from fresh and build an entirely new platform that was more future focused, more AI driven, and go from there.
Okay, well, that's exciting. And thank you for your service, literally, to the PR industry, because I think we're going to need experts like you. And I just love the combination of your tech background and PR, and it's just fascinating. So we're excited to watch what you do.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more PR insight, be sure to check out Amy's book, A Modern Guide to Public Relations, at prtalk.co. Also, please subscribe, rate, or leave us a review.